The morning sun spilled over the dry, rolling hills of Montana Territory, brushing gold against the prairie grass and the weathered walls of the old homestead. Smoke rose from the chimney, curling like a ribbon of quiet hope. Inside, a woman stood at the wooden table, her hands deep in dough, the rhythm of kneading like a heartbeat, steady, strong, and lonely. Her name was Clara Mae Hollis. She had crossed half a country with nothing but a cast-iron skillet, a Bible, and a heart that had been bruised too many times by words sharper than any man's knife. "Ain't no one ever gonna marry a woman built like a barn," her pa used to say, between sips of whiskey. "You'd best learn to cook, girl. Maybe your biscuits'll win you the love your face and figure won't." Those words had followed her like shadows on the trail west, uninvited, unrelenting. And yet, there she stood in the golden glow of dawn, her apron dusted white, her spirit unbroken. That morning the rancher came, a tall man with the sun in his eyes and silence in his step, the kind of silence that carried both pain and power. His boots thudded softly on the porch before he pushed open the wooden door, and for a moment time stood still. Clara looked up, startled, her hands frozen mid-fold over the dough. The stranger filled the doorway, wide shoulders, hat shadowing his eyes, a holster slung low on his hip. A man built by storms, tempered by loss. "You the woman who's been baking bread for the cattle hands?" he asked, voice low and rough as gravel. "Yes, sir," Clara whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "That'd be me. Before we go deeper into this story, if you're already feeling the pull of these two souls, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe to Soul Spark, where every story burns with heart, hope, and humanity. Your support keeps these tales alive." The rancher stepped inside, the firelight licking across his jawline. He looked around, the worn table, the rows of drying herbs, the soft hum of a woman who had made peace with silence. "Heard your bread's the best this side of the Bitterroot," he said. "I reckon bread's all I got to offer, sir," she replied softly. "No one loves a fat girl, but I can cook." The words fell heavy between them, carried by years of shame she hadn't earned. The man's eyes, a deep, piercing gray, shifted toward her. Not with pity, but something raw, something like recognition. He removed his hat slowly, placing it on the table. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, "you don't know what folks will love. They don't know neither." Clara had come west after her mother died, fleeing a town where whispers followed her like ghosts. "Bless her heart," they'd say, as if pity were kindness. "She's got a good soul, that one, shame about the rest of her." So she traded gossip for grasslands, ridicule for riverbeds. Out here no one judged her but the wind, and even it had kinder words. She took up work cooking for ranch hands, men who ate fast and left faster. They tipped their hats but never looked twice. And every night, after the dishes were done, she'd sit by the fire and wonder if loneliness had a smell, maybe wood smoke and flour. That morning, the rancher's visit had stirred something in her chest she didn't want to name. His name was Elias Granger. He owned half the valley, but carried himself like a man who'd lost something he couldn't replace. The rumor was his wife and child had died in a river crossing years ago. Since then, he'd spoken little, worked much, and kept the world at a careful distance. Until today. Days passed and Elias kept returning. First for bread, then for stew, then for no reason at all. He'd arrive near sundown, his boots tracked with dust, his hat in his hands. She'd pour him coffee, thick and black, and they'd sit in a silence that somehow said more than words ever could. Once she asked, "Why do you keep coming here, Mr. Granger? You've got men to cook for you at the ranch." He looked at her, long, slow, deliberate. "Because you don't just feed a man's stomach, Miss Hollis. You feed what's left of his soul." Her throat tightened. No one had ever said anything like that to her. Not once, but the past has a way of finding its way back, like an echo that refuses to die. One evening, Elias brought company, a visiting cattle buyer from the east, dressed sharp, smelling of tobacco and pride. The man looked Clara up and down and smirked. "Well now," he chuckled, "I see your cook's got a generous hand, and framed a match." The room went quiet. Even the fire seemed to flinch. Clara's cheeks burned red, and she turned away, her hands trembling over the dough. She'd heard it all before, the laughter, the shame. But somehow this time it cut deeper. Elias stood up, slow as thunder. "You just bought yourself a long walk back to town," he said coldly. The man laughed, but his laughter died fast when Elias's hand rested on his gun. No one laughed after that. When the door slammed shut, Clara stood frozen, tears glistening on her lashes. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes," Elias said, stepping closer, his voice thick with quiet fury. "I did." He paused, then softer. "You think a man don't see beauty just because it don't fit what the world says it should?" Her breath caught. "The world's never said it kindly," she murmured. "Then maybe it's time the world shut up and let a man make up his own mind," he replied. Winter came early that year. Snow draped the valley in silence. The ranch hands spoke of the freeze and the cattle, but Elias found himself speaking of Clara more often than not. He'd stop by her cabin even when the roads iced over, bringing supplies or fixing her roof under the pretense of neighborly duty. But both of them knew it was something else entirely. One night, as the wind howled outside and the fire roared within, Clara set a pot of stew between them. Elias sat quiet, his eyes tracing her face in the flickering light. "You ever think about going back east?" he asked. "No," she said simply. "Ain't nothing there for me but echoes. And out here?" "Out here," she said softly, "I got peace. And a kitchen that listens better than people ever did." He smiled, barely. But in that small curve of his lips was something she hadn't seen in years. Tenderness. The blizzard hit hard, harder than any in memory. Elias's ranch hands were trapped across the ridge, and the livestock was scattered. He saddled his horse before dawn, heading into the storm. By nightfall, Clara's cabin door flew open. Wind howled through, bringing him half frozen and bleeding. His horse had fallen in the ravine. He dragged himself miles through snow to reach her light. She rushed to him, tears freezing on her cheeks, hands shaking as she pulled off his soaked coat. "Elias, don't you dare die on me now," she cried, pressing her flour-stained hands against his wound. "You're too damn stubborn to quit like this." He laughed weakly, pain twisting his face. "Reckon you're the stubborn one, Clara Mae. Keeping a man alive just so he can taste your biscuits again." She patched him up through the night, her tears falling on his skin like prayers. When morning came and the storm broke, the world outside was white, but inside something had finally thawed. If this story has stirred something in your heart, the quiet courage, the soft strength, the power of love that sees beyond scars, take a second to like, share, and subscribe to Soul Spark. Every click helps keep these human stories burning bright. Weeks later, when Elias was strong enough to stand again, he found her in the kitchen, kneading dough as she always did. The morning light painted her face in gold. He stepped close, so close she could feel his breath. "Clara," he said, his voice rough but steady, "you once told me no one loves a fat girl." Her hands stilled, eyes lowering. "Aye, sir. Folks don't change their minds easy." "Maybe not," he said, "but I ain't folks." She looked up and in his eyes was a warmth that melted everything inside her. "You cook like a woman who's been hungry for more than food," he said, "and I've been starving for a long time." The tears came fast then. Tears for all the years she'd swallowed hurt, for every cruel word she'd pretended didn't matter. He reached out, wiping a streak of flour from her cheek, his touch trembling but sure. "No one loves a fat girl, you said," he whispered. "Then maybe it's time someone did." The fire crackled behind them, the world outside frozen still, but in that small kitchen, two lonely souls found warmth that no winter could steal. Months later, the valley bloomed again. Travelers who passed the Granger ranch spoke of the smell of bread that drifted across the plains, rich and comforting, like home. They said the rancher's wife could cook like heaven itself, but those who knew better said it wasn't just her cooking that changed the man, it was her heart, because love, the real kind, isn't blind. It sees and chooses anyway, and sometimes all it takes to rewrite a life is one woman with flour on her hands and a man brave enough to say, You're beautiful, just as you are.